Hello, mortals. I'm back at you with another banger. We're going to do something a little different this time. I actually was going to do something a little more instructional. And since I like to be controversial, I decided I was going to explain to the community how to use AutoHotkey. Now, I'm going to give you a disclaimer warning right out of the gate. I couldn't find the official policy on this, but from the way I understand it, automating tasks in Mortal Online is okay and it's within the rules as long as it's very simple and it's done like for a very rote repetitious task like training spells or whatever it is. It goes into the illegal status, or you're not supposed to do it for PvP or anything of that nature, doing highly complex like things that might impact the economy or botting gathering, stuff like that is not permitted to my understanding. I don't feel like it's my responsibility to figure this out for you. Policies change and evolve over time, so you got to do your due diligence and figure out what you're allowed to do. All right, knowledge is power, and I bestow this power upon you. You choose how you use it. Now, all that being said, I'm going to explain how to use AutoHotkey. So AutoHotkey is a scripting engine that can send commands to an application on your computer. It's extremely versatile. It's very useful. It can get really complex, but it allows you to programmatically execute commands in an application. And you could use this in a different array of functions, really. It doesn't even have to be a video game. Your imagination is the limit for what you can do with it. So all that being said, part of the reason that we do this is because StarVault doesn't really respect our time in this game. If you haven't noticed, a lot of things are very repetitious, long and drawn out. I really wish they did respect our time more. It's just an unfortunate consequence of this. To them, for some reason, hardcore equals waste your fucking time. And I take issue with that, and I'm in full rebellion of it. I love StarVault, I love Henrik, but please stop wasting our time. At any rate, I'm empowering you to get some of your time back. So without further ado, let's get into this. So this script right here that I'm going to explain first is kind of like my crowning achievement of scripting in AutoHotkey. This is the most complicated script I made, and so I'll explain this one and work backwards from there, because this just gives you an idea of like just how powerful and the possibilities that you have with this type of scripting engine. So in order to make this one work, I recommend buying these bows. They're very bad and they're very cheap, which is a good combination for what we're trying to do. Because when you start training mounted archery, you're going to be shooting your horse. So you want to do the least amount of damage that you possibly can to prevent your horse from A, either dying, or 2, losing loyalty and running away. On top of that, you want to make sure that you have armor on your horse as well. So I buy bodkin arrows because they're cheap and they're the worst. Like I said, that's an award-winning combination for shooting your horse over and over for this purpose. And once you have those, then you can kind of get into it here. So I'm going to explain the script line by line, but first I want to give credit where credit's due. This individual right here, Mortalitas, I can't say his name. This person, I started to do a Google search for macros in MO2 just to see if anything was out there, and then this guy had this already in existence. He's got several here, so I grabbed his archery one, and then I expanded on it quite a bit. So as you can see, I got like a ton of different scripts that I've tinkered around with on this game. So I guess I'll take it from the top. So this is what a more complicated script than AutoHotkey looks like. It works like this. The basic functionality is you designate a key, : and then it will execute the block within once you hit that key. So we have F5, F6, F7. These two are very cool, very useful. I didn't learn about this functionality until later, and actually I got to give credit to that Mortalitas guy, the one that had I saw this in his script first, and I adapted it for my own. Now, before I was using these keys, I was going to the bottom right to the taskbar and right-clicking AutoHotkey to reload, stop, pause, and all that. That's very tedious and annoying. So what this allows you to do is I can have my script automating something, and I can hit F6 and it'll pause. And I can hit F6 to start back where it left off. Very useful. F7, has a reload built into it. What this allows you to do is you can pause your script, you can edit your code and change something, and then reload the whole script from the top and then start it all over again. This just saves you key presses down here, like clicking. You don't have to click these and reload. It's very handy. Saved me a ton of time, makes it way easier to whip these up. So the next step is I'm going to explain this to you line by line. So I've designated some variables. Now, if you have any exposure to programming or scripting, you should know what variables are. Hopefully you took a basic algebra class and you know what a variable is. So in programming, you can designate values to variables and manipulate them in the code later. I have a few here. Now, full disclosure, this is not like production level code. This is just a dumb script I whipped up for a goofy video game, and it's not like I didn't put a ton of thought into it, but I did have a lot of fun tinkering and seeing what exactly was possible with this scripting engine. So quiver right here represents the your arrows that you're currently on the stack in your hotbar. Quivers is like the max amount you have. So you'll notice this goes 0 through 9 because you can have 10 slots on your hotbar. So 0 through 9. So it iterates through those. Next up, we have bows. Bow singular represents the bow that you're currently on. Bows plural represents the number of bows that you have in your inventory. You can tinker these to your own. And honestly, you're going to see that this is maybe a bit overboard, because by the time you start to tinker with this, you kind of have your skills already leveled up. I did this while I was working in the background. I was tinkering with it all day and adding little new functionality. Another thing we set is the static value. Here's what, earlier when we bought that bow, it has 50 durability. So we set the static value to keep track of that. And then bow dura is going to represent our current bow that we're using right now. What's its durability? We initialize it with 50 using a reference to this variable. Now in AutoHotkey, the way that you reference a variable is you need to use the percentage sign. This is a nuance of AutoHotkey. If you scripted a program before, this might throw you off. Every language has its nuances for syntax. In AutoHotkey, in order to actually get the value out of the variable, you have to enclose it in these percentage signs. Otherwise, it will literally think that you mean bow underscore max underscore dura as a string of text. That's not what we want. So here's the meat and potatoes right here. So what this is doing is it's looping as long as these values are true. This is like human legible, right? So it's like while the quiver that I'm currently using is less than my max number of quivers, and while the bow I'm using is less than or equal to the max bows I'm having, loop over this. And it loops 50, all right? Because there's 50 arrows in a quiver per the last patch. Nice little update, used to be 25. And within this loop, we're pushing down the left button, the left mouse button. And then we're sleeping for 0.2 of a second, and then we're letting go of the mouse button and then sleeping for a full second. So in computer talk, this is 1,000 microseconds, aka 1 second. This is how it's clocked with the sleep. Sleep's very important in this type of code because you can only push buttons so fast, and the way that machines execute code, it could do this whole thing in like a fraction of a second, this whole script, very fast. So in order to not have that happen, we have to set pauses between the key presses. So this is, if you think about this logically, when you shoot your bow, what are you doing? You're pushing down the button, you're holding down, and then you're letting up. Now, we wanted to get this as low as we possibly could and have it actually work, because we don't want to cock the bow and do more damage. We want to do the least amount of damage possible. Now, I tinkered with this, and this is where it gets a little weird because there's latency to the server, and this could vary for your personal environment and how far away you are to StarVault server. There could be potentially be drift. You'll even notice it sometimes. I've seen it lag out and kind of like, I'm not even shoot all my arrows like I'm supposed to. Point is that you might have to tweak this for your own purposes, but the goal is to just shoot your bow as fast as possible without like holding it back too long. Bow dura, right here, we're actually tracking the durability of our bow that we're currently using. It just so happens that every time you shoot your bow, it subtracts 0.10 durability from your bow. So this is keeping track of that. The next block is checking if your current bow, if your durability is less than or equal to 0, then we're sending a command to change the bow. So this translates to a key on your hotbar. It's the number. So we started with 1, so it's going to go for the first slot. Now the plus sign represents the alt key, so it's hitting alt 1. And then after we send that command, we switch our bow. We're incrementing this variable so the next time it comes around, it'll be on the next number. So it'll go to 2, which will be number 2 on our hotbar. Bow dura. Once we change bows, we need to reset back to the static value of 50. And that's how we keep track of this in the script. Now, once that's done, once we've done a full loop of 50 arrows that we've shot, we have a small pause. This may or may not be needed. You know, I put these pauses in here because of the key press thing. You want to make sure you have delays between hitting keys or it can mess up your whole script. And it's very hard to troubleshoot because AutoHotkey is kind of running in the background and you can't see what it's doing. So after it's done a full 50 stack of arrows, now we're using the quiver value. Now this represents your arrows on your skill bar. Sleep again, and then increment to your next stack of arrows. Now, what does this look like? In the game, we take our arrows, and I'm only going to do a few. So normally I would fill up this whole bar. Like I have my magic spells, but I have a blank canvas for me now. Now, for this, it starts at 50. I'm sorry, it starts at 0 through 9. So I'm going to put this here just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to bring up the pet because I want to see make sure I don't like lose loyalty, and I want you to see in real time the stack. Now, the other thing I would do when we talked about the alt keys, this is alt 1. So the way that this would work is I'll keep shooting this bow until the script realizes that we're under or at 0. At that point, the script is going to try to equip a new bow by hitting alt 1, and it's going to count up. So you see how this works? So you would basically have your arrows go up here and then fill the whole bar up. And that's about as far as I got with this script. You could really go nuts with this. If you wanted to, you could even have like multiple skill bars and you could have it iterate through your skill bars. The sky's the limit, or actually the actual limit would be your inventory space. You're kind of stuck with the amount of inventory space limits what you can do here. And at some point, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. You'll have your masteries done by the time you get all that complicated shit done. But if you had that itch to scratch, you could explore that. You could expand on what I've already created. Without further ado, let's actually fire this thing off. So I'm going to pull out my bow. I'm going to look down at my horse, hit F5. It's not going to work for some reason, unbeknownst to me. Let's make sure that it's actually running. Train archery is the one. So let's reload this and then F5. All right. Now we're off to the races. I'm going to let this run and it's going to fast forward. All right, we're going to stop it there. So you've seen that it switched. You can even see it highlighted over here. So it changed the stack like it's supposed to. And the way that this script runs is that it would keep going indefinitely until this number equals this number, or the bow thing. So it just turns out that like that's like 500 arrows you have to shoot to go through a 50 durability bow, if my math is correct. So shooting through a whole 10 stack there is about the time where it breaks your bow, and that's where you would need to you could reorganize this script to possibly have your stacks of 100 and then double tap these. You'd have to create the logic on your own. Anyways, that's just an idea of like if someone had a wild hair up their ass and they really wanted to like streamline this and make it like go nuts. And it's already kind of complex for the simple task of archery. But this can let you just run this in the background while you do whatever, watch YouTube. You just keep a cursory check on it every now and then. As long as you're keeping an eye on it, as far as I know, it's within the realms of the rules. So now that I've explained that, I'm going to go on to some of the other scripts here. So one of the first things I ever made was this. Not actually. The first things I made were related to spellcasting. I'll show that in a moment. But this is a very basic example, the most simple form of what you can do. And I remember when I used to not even have these keys to stop and start, and these are huge. Some of these are not in tune with my most recent knowledge, and I haven't gone back and fixed any of these. Anyway, so when TC came out, they had tower structures, and we used to have to sit there and bang it down by hand. And what this does is it basically swings up and down every half a second until I stop it. So you can equip a hammer, let it rip, and just let it go and save yourself the carpal tunnel. Because who wants to sit there and honestly press click 1,000 times? It's bad for your hand. It's inefficient. It probably shouldn't even be structured like that. I don't know. I can understand how they developed it the way they did, but maybe a more intelligent design would just be have like when you're building, have it be like destroying as well. Like you hold down the key and then it just starts destroying it, because it's just not very practical to click that many times, or unless you're using something like this, and that's why we do it. The other thing I created, this is gonna look like shit, but one of my first ones was actually spell training. So this A and D is like WASD. So this sidesteps for a few seconds at a time, back and forth to stop the AFK from triggering. And then it's just casting E. And I could have put this in a loop in retrospect once I learned how to do the looping. This is very early on in my AutoHotkey career. So it's looping through spell casting over and over. And then at the very end, it's hitting Control 4, which is resting on my toolbar. And then it's taking 1,000 microseconds or 1 second times 60. I like to set it up like this to just make it more, it's easier for me to see at a glance. So this is 1 minute. So I rest for 1 minute and then rinse repeat over and over until whatever, I got my EQ up to 100 or whatever I need to get it to. So very useful for that. Yeah, here's a fun one. So emotes. In a game like this where you're in a three-dimensional space, it's not exactly easy to take your hand off the mouse and like type in emotes in the middle of doing stuff. So I set about, this will actually open up your chat bar and then type in these emotes for you and enter them. And the caret key or shift 6 stands for control. So this is control F5 through control F12. I set up a random batch of different emotes that I like to use, and that makes it to where I can be riding around, and if I want to, I can like flip someone the bird, which is hilarious. I love it. Or I could just greet somebody. Oh, it's not working. I hit the wrong button. Oh, hello. If I want to, and see, sometimes it doesn't work. You can see down here that it typed it out. So this is an imperfect script. It's kind of finicky because it's a very weird thing to do. And this is just the power of AutoHotkey. There's no interface in the game to do this. StarVault didn't design an interface to assign emotes or hotkeys. And in a game like this, it'd be nice because they're kind of hard to do in the middle of like whatever. However, yeah, whatever, I get it. It's not a priority. So that was a fun little thing that I figured out, and I think it's pretty harmless. Now let's get into what might be a little controversial. I created this. So this right here is an answer to having a separate key for push, which is a really great change because a lot of times when people were blocking and they let go and they went to swing again, they wouldn't have quite let go of the block and you would accidentally push. This is very annoying, and I'm sure that's what prompted StarVault to make this change. So what the problem for me is, like, I'm kind of running out of room to running out of keys to press. So I came up with this solution. So this is the Alt key and Shift Alt key. What this means is I can actually hit Alt Q, which is my default. I kept the default casting. Let me equip a hammer. So if I hit Q, it's like you need to cast a spell first. But if I hit Alt Q, but first I need my weapon out. Oh, hold up. My script's running. So if I hit Alt Q, it pushes. And I can also hit Shift Alt Q, which means I can run and push at the same time. This is just more ergonomic and easy for me. Like, I can, boom, I don't have to like move my hands to another key. I can be running. I'm just running out of space and easily press keys. Now, the reason I find this controversial is because Mortal Online 2's client does not provide an interface to let you do this type of complex combination keying. It's unfortunate, but their keybind system is very simple and it's not very well fleshed out. I wish they would take some time to fix things like that. These are small user interface design things that StarVault doesn't seem to want to spend much time and attention, and they should, because it's one of the most important things. You know, I love this, that they did this to the map. Like, this was a nice thing. Hell, one day they might even put your cursor on there, and I know that's controversial. There's some hardcore, you don't want your cursor or see where you're at in the map. It's important to know where the map is. Whatever, however you feel about it. Like, this shit right here, though, and the fact that they don't show up until you've actually been there, like it has to be in your journal, this was a nice user interface change. This whole map was a nice user interface change. StarVault needs to focus on more shit like that. It would make the game a better place. Anyway, I digress. I don't want to shit on them too hard about that. Let's see, what else? So, anyways, this code right here, this doesn't upset my moral compass. This is me taking matters into my own hands because the keybind interface, just simply put, is not good enough. It's not up to standard. It's not up to snuff. They can do better. And I did this on my own, but this is very simple. This isn't very big. Now, other people are using tools like this to do stuff like auto, spin, macro, swings, complex like combination, feint, feint over and over. You could have that all programmed into something like this. I do not use these. I've tinkered with it, but I've never actually used it in the wild in a real fight. I actually found it quite. I was like experimenting with the guild or whatever, just testing it out of curiosity. But I lost interest in it. I'm not interested in playing like that. But I know there's a lot of players in this game that do, and I'm sure most of you, if you're not naive, you realize that's the case. That, you know, people in this game will use anything for an advantage. Look at these fucking nerds that like stretch their screen out and make it look like absolute dog shit. That's how bad some people want to win. If they'll do that, imagine what else they're capable of doing. I'm telling you, dude, anybody that'll stretch their screen out like that to win, I don't know what they're capable of, because that's some fucking cornball shit. Anyways, whatever, play the game how you want. If you can stand to look at it like that, then I gotta give you some amount of credit, because it just looks like ass. I can't even watch their PvP videos because it looks so disgusting. But let's get back on topic. This is a gray area. This is up to the community. This is a philosophical debate. The problem with some of these things is that you can't really track it. It's hard to detect. That's not like packet injecting. It's sending commands to an application on your operating system. It's going to be really difficult for StarVault to track this, and I think it's way outside their wheelhouse. If you look at the type of development work they've done and what their strengths are, I know it's not in detecting this type of behavior in a player. They might use the anti-cheat stuff. Sure, they can catch the obvious stuff, packet injecting, hopefully most of the time, though I've seen some pretty scary videos that say otherwise. But yeah, this is out there. This is a gray area. God, I was just thinking, Rands, it was accusing J45K or Tatsuya of using macros, which I don't believe. I don't agree with. I think that he's conflated that. I know Tatsuya uses keybinds for his mouse, for his swings. And if you think about it logically, like having keybind presses for your attacks is superior, because especially for dueling is where it's most relevant. Like canting your screen to do an attack means that if you're trying to do spins and shit, you're kind of stuck with having to move your view to accommodate the swing you're doing. Now, if you have it set to key presses, that opens up a whole new world. I was never able to get this to work for me in a way that felt right. So I just do it the stock standard way. And that's why I'm a shitty duelist. I'll probably never win a 1v1 against anybody that's like higher than mediocre, mid-level. I'm a mid-level duelist. Like I can do okay for the majority of the population, but I'm definitely not at the high end. Now in a team fight, I don't do too bad. I understand positioning and I understand my role in the fight, and it doesn't matter as much. It doesn't matter how many like masking, whatever they call it, animation hiding bullshit. It doesn't really matter in a team fight because you got too many people to focus on at once. So yeah, let's see. That's it. I don't have much else to say. I appreciate your time. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I can do more content like this, more supplemental programming, gaming related stuff. I don't know, I'm just trying to think of other stuff I can do videos about, and I wanted to do this one because it's fun and I like programming, and it was kind of a fun logic exercise. So take this information as you will, and have a good one. Thanks for watching.